So now we have our faux binding, but there's a problem. When we start compositing or transferring these pixels onto our color, all of these pixels inside here are going to interfere. So what I want to do is I'm going to take our selection again with our faux binding layer. We want to get rid of all those pixels that are inside of our binding. And the easiest way to do that is to just make our guitar selection again. I'm going to go up here and modify and contract that selection just 2 pixels, only because I want to ensure that it does extend under the edge of the guitar. Right? Now we have that selection inside, which is exactly what we want. Hit the delete key and cut it away. Now we don't really see the dramatic effect because I still have the layer turned on. But now you can see we have this cool little binding level layer going all around it. I'm going to move it down below our color so it's the right thickness. Alright. Okay. So that's good. We've got that taken care of. Have our faux binding created. I'm going to go ahead and save my project. I'm pretty happy with that. So what we want to do at this point is we need to figure out how we want to transfer these pixels onto our green and subsequently the black layer below it. We could go up here and just mess with the transparency, but again, it's going to give us a flat result. We're not really going to get any kind of cool reaction to where it's going to look like it's really part of that top. Photoshop has a function that's called transfer modes. And what these do is they affect the way pixels on top are composited or transferred to the pixels below them, on layers below them. So if I go down here and select screen, it's going to add these pixel values of the quilted maple top to the pixel values below it, and it's going to get really bright and blown out. If I go multiply, it's going to darken them. And that's not horrible, but it's not really what we want. The one transfer mode that I've found that gives the best results is right here, and it's called soft light. Now on its own, that's not particularly wonderful to look at, but we can go in here and we can, change its values. Actually, I'm going to try hard light. Yeah. You can kind of go through these and just see which ones work better for you. Some of these will give varying results, and you might, find something that you really like. But this gives us a pretty good look, and there's enough of the figure left that it looks like something. It's not quite the color that I'm going for, so I'm going to darken up the green in my, well, that's probably truer green than the others. I'm going to darken up the green in this layer a little bit. That's selected. We're going to go edit fill, darken that green. Go back and turn our maple layer on. There we go. Now it's starting to look like something. And sometimes you can just duplicate the layer and it really gets rich and deep. And if that's too much for you, you can go in and just take the transparency down on one of the layers. You can go in and take the transparency down on one of the layers to get exactly the look that you're going for. And that looks pretty good to me. So now we have pretty interesting look here. We've got our lighting still happening the way we set it up earlier with our layer mask. We've got our quilted maple all set in. We have our faux binding showing nicely around the edge. Now let's go ahead and turn on our reflections again. And this thing is really starting to look like a guitar. It is really starting to take on that the look that we're going for. Now there are a couple more things we can do to really enhance this. One of them is we did an enhancement here to help that little landing zone, and still may not be obvious to you what it's doing, but you can see now as I turn that on and off, watch our little edge of the guitar there. You can see that it's just kind of anchoring that a little bit more. And really as you go in and make changes, you can you may find that you have to go back to certain layers and darken them or lighten them or whatever. And if we wanted to leave that just like that, I think it would be beautiful. But there's one other thing we can do. I'm going to add another layer. And so from our green layer, we're grabbing our selection again. And this time, we are going to go back into our select drop down. And this is where we're going to contract it, the full 16 pixels. And I'm going to do this probably twice to get, maybe 3 times to get the amount of change I want. So now we have this little thing going on here, quite a bit deeper than what we did for our landing zone enhancement. But this, what we're actually building here, is going to be a sunburst. Oh, actually, I'm not going to call that sunburst. I'm just going to call it burst because there's nothing sunny about it, but it's definitely going to be a burst. I'm going to go ahead and save my project. So we're going to follow the same process. We want to fill the space between the edge of our binding and our new selection. So what we need to do is, again, Control-Shift-I to invert our selection. We're going to go to here, and you could go with a really dark green. I like to go with black just because it gives you options if you want to use transfer modes. So we're going to go with black. We're going to go Edit, Fill, and we fill that entire outside with black. So we have our problem again, but it's not really a problem because we just select our guitar top again, invert that selection one more time, Control-Shift-I, and hit delete, and it cuts that away. So we have our nice little burst layer, or what we're going to turn into our burst layer, and we're going to do basically the same thing we did before. We're going to pick up that selection again from our green layer, and we are going to jump into our filter palette, blur, Gaussian blur, and this time we're going to go up to about 24 pixels or so, and maybe even higher than that. We'll say about 30 pixels, and you can see what's happening here. I'm going to sample this area. You can see it's keeping a nice crisp edge out around our binding, but it is really giving us a nice blur or gradation to transparency inside the guitar, just like you would expect a burst would do. So we're going to go ahead and accept that. We're going to drop our selection, and just like that, we have this beautifully shaped, ready to go burst layer.